All right. Peace, family. Yo, this is Cosmic Sankofa coming at you or having a all right. discussion. Peace, family. Yo, this is Cosmic Sankofa coming at you or having a all right. discussion. Peace, family. Yo, this is Cosmic Sankofa coming at you or having a all right. Peace, family. Yo, this is Cosmic Sankofa. All right. So what I'm gonna do right now really is practice for a later time. So um I'm working something out here. You'll see this, those of you that follow me, and recently I've had a lot of people watching, a lot more people watching these videos than before. And much respect, light and love to you for that. But you've seen one of these presentations, at least one, I think, two of these presentations before. The third one I saved for myself. I was still working on it, still has a little bit of kinks and it's very theoretical. But I stopped working on it to finish up some classes that I was taking in college that I had to get out the way really fast. And so, uh, and then I just decided to say, really a topic like topics like the one that I'm exploring can go on forever. Entire dissertations have been written on just different portions of my topic. So I might as well just get into it and then let the chips fall where they're made. But this is practice. Like I said before, I appreciate the views that I've gotten most recently, but I hope you can enjoy this presentation I'm about to lay down. So let's go ahead and get this all straightened together. All right. So the title of this presentation is called Echoes of the Kemetic Legacy in the Modern Day. Right. Give me one moment. All right. So what I'm going to discuss here is going to be um, three different concepts that pervade the community right now, and that's very important. One of them is Kabbalah. The other is deity communication in African diaspora religions. And the third is energy centers in the body, right? All three of those concepts are deeply embedded in the spiritual, metaphysical, energetic manifestation side of the Kemetic legacy, right? So to show that the ancient and near ancient Kemetic spiritual thought, right? And so when I mean ancient, I'm talking about 2000 BCE, near ancient, I'm more speaking about 300 BCE. So in the modern spiritual practices, the concepts, we have certain concepts like karma, twin souls, reincarnation, past life regressions, energy manipulation, things like Reiki, acupuncture, herbal medicine. Then you got like chakras, which deal a lot with sound manipulation, chanting, balancing, activation, crystal work, grid work, healing, yoga. All of these different concepts are pervading the community today, right? And so then the conversation and the now when we look at all of this, the majority of this has an Eastern Indian Chinese origin, right? You can definitely trace the first two, Reiki acupuncture, to Indian Chinese origin, right? India has a form of acupuncture called marma points. I don't think Reiki, I think, is a Chinese Buddhist uh, uh, invention or practice, initial practice. Now, chanting is universal, but chanting for the chakras, that is definitely Indian, um, and so that now and crystal work, that is universal. So let's get into it, right? The modern day Kemetic tradition, right? You have the ASCAP version of the Kemetic tradition, which includes the great works of Dr. Ben. This by no means is extensive. Dr. B, Dr. Leopold Vega, Jacob Brothers, Dr. Mario Beatty, Dr. Commander Great, Commander Carr. This is in the ASCAP scholastic level, right? So these are the brothers and sisters that are arguing in the realm of India and teaching the intellectual achievements, intellectual greatness of our people, right? But then you have a different version of the Kemetic tradition, right? And these are what's called Kemetic practitioners. You have the Sara Society, the Shrine of Ptah, Ashby, Egyptian yoga, and I have to include Wabi. Right, and then these are the some of the major practices without having been an initiate of all of the traditions, but having studied a lot of what you see on the screen. This is my takeaway from some of their understanding. Right now, of course, speak to somebody who's a practitioner and you get deeper information, right? But prior to, and see this, all of this is like 1980s and to the present. Almost all of them, right? Asar said, big start in the 70s, Shrine of Ptah, big start in the 70s, Water Ashby, big start in the 70s, Egyptian Yoga Brother, big start in the 60s, Kumapua, 70s, 80s, possibly Nuwabian, whatever. Dr. York was doing a whole bunch of stuff, right? But this is all the modern day. Now, prior to that, from 1900 to 2010, how you got that type of information, how you got into like this type of information was by either books, which led to what we would call self-initiation. We would find out about different practices that were written by people who like went to the so-called East and brought them back, or you would get initiation, which included going through one of several societies, the Masons, Rosicrucians, the Theosophical Society, or the Golden Dawn, in order to get this information, right? And that now that also by no means are any of these lists definitive or extensive. You know what I'm saying? This is just what I understand so far the tradition to be, right? So what I'm gonna seek to demonstrate tonight is that the Western esoteric legacy, West African spirituality within the I didn't really cover that, but we can get into that, after if people have questions. I left that part out because I figured, the presentation. Western, Western science and African diaspora spirituality, they have their basis within the Kemetic legacy, right? So right off the bat, Kabbalah Kabbalah is a source and foundation of a lot of esoteric spiritual education systems. Yes. Many of us have been touched by this particular Western lesson. If you deal with the playing cards, right? There's a lot of theories on where the playing cards originate. They originate in with gambling people in Arabia, or did they stem from the Kabbalist tradition, right? But either way, playing cards are formed of divination, has a form of divination based off the four worlds of Kabbalah and the tarot system, right? Both systems arose simultaneously in the 13th and 14th centuries. Playing cards, they first appeared as a form of what's called cartomancy, right? Which is a way of telling the future with the playing cards. All of us, every single one of us, not all of us, not every single one of us, but a lot of us, we got together with the spades, with the hearts. We won. We play whatever we play with the card decks, right? But initially, the card decks started off as a divination system, and then got into the more materialistic society, just like Chutes and Ladders. Chutes and Ladders was initially a divination system in India that they took over to America and turned into a child's playing game. But Chutes and Ladders is a divination system. Chutes and Ladders started off originally as an Indian divination system, right? So a lot of us, have been touched by the esoteric spiritual traditions, and we don't even know it, right? These are images by from the 1700s. The use of playing cards to predict a horoscope, you know, for divination purposes, right? Here's a book on divination, card divination, written in 1909. This is just an example of what a reading may or may not look like. And so what you have here is the Ace of Clubs, which is going to when you get that pulled in whatever position it might be in, it represents wealth and happiness and peace of mind. The King of Clubs is a dark man upright. You see it on the screen here. You can read it, right? And I'm not going to get into the divination and how to do it, but this is what you have initially, right? So let's talk about these different traditions: the Masons, the Rosicrucians, the Theosophy, the Order of the Golden Dawn, Hermetic text, and Kabbalah, right? Now with the Masons and the influence of Albert Pike and the fourth degree and the Royal Arch degree of the Scottish Rite is when the Masons learned Kabbalah. So I'm trying to put it together and, put it on Albert Pike. But from my research so far, and not really being affiliated with the organization in and of itself, but having had a discussion, let me emphasize that, with a modern day Mason, it was confirmed that, spirituality, Kabbalah, is introduced in the fourth degree, right? Now, in reference to the Rosicrucians, there's a brother by the name of Paschal Beverly Randolph, who began the first Rosicrucian organization here in America, right? So let's get into the origins of the Kabbalah, right? There's a there's a book called The Origins of the Kabbalah by Gershom Sloan, right? Written in 1962, where a lot of this information is going to come from. So here is kind of like a trajectory of the different organizations, that led to the development of this spiritual tradition in the West, right? You have some people called the Paulicians, which, you know, whose next biggest expression came with the Bogomils, who led into the Cathars in French, who led into the French Knights Templars. And I found it very interesting that Brother Jabari had said that there was a temple of Osset in France. Like, I need to get some more information on that myself. That was very dope and interesting. All right, so the Paulicians, right? They emerged in Armenia in the 7th century. They rejected most of Christianity and focused their teachings on Paul. They said that the material world was evil and the spiritual world was good, and they rejected the authority of the Catholic Church. This, now, just hearing this, it would seem as if though it would be an isolated incident. But if you study the origins of Christianity, you would see that this particular philosophy is very reminiscent of Marcion philosophy, which did the exact same thing except the last one. Instead of Marcion rejecting the authority of the Catholic Church, Marcion was rejected by the Catholic Church and then went and spread his version of Christianity far and wide. And my theory is, initiates within that tradition were in Armenia. And then they began teaching on this level. And so that's my theory on that joint because it makes sense. But then at the same time, honestly, you can read the Bible yourself and see that there's two different gods in the Bible. There's a psychopathic, murderous God of the Old Testament, and there's this all-loving God in the New Testament who at the same time is kind of psychotic as well because it's all loving. There's contradictions in that as well. This is why the arguments arise because intellectually it doesn't make any sense. And you had Bogomilism, which was a Christian dualist sect that came in the Bulgarian Empire, right? And they were also influenced by the Paulicians. And they held the same thing. The material world was created by an evil God. The spiritual world was created by a good God, right? And they rejected the Eucharist as well. And they were also known in Italy as the Cathars, right? And then, but this sect, the Bogomils in particular, survived until until the 1600s or 1500s. And then we have the Kachars, which did the exact same thing. Rejected the Old Testament, didn't venerate icons. The cross was denounced as an instrument of torture. The one brother, the rapper, who said, if Jesus was executed in an electric chair around our necks, that's exactly what you see. Right? The church was seen as being in league with the devil, and the devil was the creator of this world. And they like the secret book of the Supper by Jeremiah, right? Now the Cathars, they were a dualist sect. I said this earlier in the France in the 11th century. Same. You know what I'm saying? But they're very crucial to the development of their philosophy lends to the development of the Knights Templar. Now, like I said, whole books and dissertations can be written about all of these people, right? Now, Interestingly enough, what we have here is kind of France at this point in time, right? So we have the Cathars leading into France, right? We have the Cathars leading into France. Like we got them here in southern France in the 10th century or 11th century, right? Now here, and then we know that the Knights Templar, we have France, the Knights Templar have a deep history with France as well, right? But here's kind of like what happened, right? So in France, you have the emergence of one of the earliest Kabbalah, Isaac the Blind, in the 1200s. Um, you got the dreams and prayers of Isaac the Blind, and then you have the Kabbalistic movement that occurred in Provence, right? And then you have what led to Maimonides in Spain. So the Kabbalistic movement and the Jewish Kabbalistic movement went from France to Spain, right? And the first it happened in Girona, and then you got Maimonides and Ezra ben Solomon, who are some of the earliest Kabbalists, right? What then led to the explosion of the Knights Templar getting a hold of this information. After the dissolution and destruction of the Knights Templar, some people say the organization split. Then you had the underground secret organization turning into the Masons and the Rosicrucians. That is a theory that is that's presented, right? Right. But here's the interesting thing, right? The oldest Kabbalistic text is a work called the Book Bahir, which appeared sometime in the 12th century in France. Once again, we're looking at France as an epicenter, right? This work is the oldest mention of the 10 Sephiroth and clearly shows Gnostic influence. And then, according to the research of Shlom, this work, prior to entering the Western Jewish culture, was the intellectual property of mystics in the Middle East. And he says that because when he looks at a particular section in the book Bahir, he sees like a Middle Eastern reference. You know, there was a discussion where if we look at colloquialisms, you know, our sayings within a certain time period, you know, like there's a saying, get the bag, right? People are saying, get the bag, get the bag, get the bag, right? That's clearly something that, you know, a statement that's being made that, you know, has, you know, its origins within the last 20 years. Let me say the last 20 years, you know, in the 70s on is, you know, get that dough, get that money. I don't know what it was in the 50s, but it wasn't around in the 1800s. So the concept of get the money and then the term get the bag, it has a definite origin, so to speak. You know, we can trace it. Oh, interesting. Hold on a second. It has a definite origin, so to speak. You know, we can trace it. Oh, interesting. Hold on a second. Hold on a second. Okay. I get it. I get it. I'm glad I caught that. Sorry for people that may be watching. Hmm. Okay. I get it. I get it. So let me see. All right. So it's caught up. All right, I get it. 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 Hopefully, all right. So if you were, oh, yo, apologies are in order. All right, but it is what it is. So I'm glad I caught that. So you weren't even seeing the slides that I had up on here, um, which is cool. You know, it is what it is. But I know how to do it now from now on, right? All right, but let me catch us up to where we were in the discussion. All right. So, like I was saying before, there's certain sayings that would not exist in certain times, right? So, in section 186 of the book Bahir, it says, "Thus a man must first fear God, and only then study Torah." It is like a man who went to buy date honey and who did not take with him a container to carry them home. He said, I will carry them upon my breast. But they were too heavy for him. He was afraid that they would break open, soil his clothes. So he threw them away. Then he was doubly punished, once for the spoiling of the food, and then again for the loss of his money. Right? Now, it is now, like I said, now Shalom says on page 59, these lines can be may well be taken from a thoroughly unmystical source, but they could have been written only in a country where the culture of the date palm flourished, and the date was an object of daily use in the warmest parts of Palestine or Babylonia, right? So what he is saying here is that the tradition of Kabbalah existed in countries that were ruled by Muslims. And this is going to become important later on, especially as we get into, the persecution of certain Christians by other Christians, right? And then Sloan, right here, when you're reading his book, he's constantly making connections between certain Gnostic concepts and concepts found in the book by here, right? He says that now he makes the connection, which is cool. He makes the connection to the Valentinians, has one of the most common designations for the pleroma in the realm of the aeons. Indeed, he says, indeed, in a passage in the newly discovered Gnostic Gospel of Truth, reads like a parallel to our Bahir passage that they found. And it says, the perfect Father who generated the all in the midst of which is the all and of which the all has need. And further on, and for what did the all need, if not the gnosis concerning the Father, right? All of this doesn't make sense to you if you're not initiated into the language of mysticism, right? But it's going to make some sense later on. So, presupposed in the image of the tree of divine powers in section 85. These powers also appear as beautiful vessels or treasures. Once again, a well-known Gnostic metaphor occurring frequently in the description of the upper worlds and the pleroma. The later Coptic Gnostic text of the Pistis Sophia type as well as Mandaean literature have a lot of references to things such as the treasures or treasure houses, the 6 days of creation of the world, which the Bahir designates in section 92 as primordial days, are aeons of this kind, of which the book says God made 6 beautiful vessels. The precious vessel, also in section 52, is well known to us from the Valentinian Gnosis. All right, so what happened, right? So, okay, so we have the book Bahir, the earliest text. We have the book Bahir, the earliest text of Gnosticism, of the Kabbalah in the West. We have this explosion. We have this explosion of spiritual conversation occurring in France uh, during the 13th century, right? We have in the 10th century, right? We have Bogomilism, which was an extension of Paulism, which had Marcion like beliefs, the two gods of the Bible. We have an extension of that occurring with the Cathars in France. You know, they discuss three types of men, three types of initiation. And then we have the Kabbalah emerging in 1200s, 13th century in southern France, right? If you remember that presentation. So what happened? This this is what my theory is on what occurred. In the 9th to the 11th centuries, Greek texts were translated by the Moors into Arabic and Latin. And in the 10th and 11th centuries, oh wow, I repeated that, right? And it's the great Greco-Arabic translation movement, right, which took place during the 8th through the 13th centuries. It involved the translation of Greek philosophical and scientific texts into Arabic, right? Here's the breakdown of it. It was initiated. So when the Muslims went on their rampage across the world, they came across these texts, which were the inheritors. They were basically the inheritors of the ancient world traditions, right? And I need to, before I get on with this, let me take notes. Give me a moment. Hold on one second. Because I see some things in this presentation that I definitely need to fix and correct or augment. The first one was, so I need to just turn this into bullet points that I speak to, right? Okay, the Rosicrucian slide, I need to deal with the Paschal, and then the Greco-Arabic translation movement. All right. But either way it goes, the Greco-Arabic translation movement, there was here that they they translated the book by here, and then you have this mystical explosion in the West. You get give me 1 second. Oh, y'all still rocking with me. All right. Uh, so we have this explosion in astrology, alchemy, and Kabbalah that occurs in the West. So, who are the Knights Templar, right? They were a Christian military order that existed in the European Middle Ages, right? From 1119 specifically to Friday the 13th, 1307. And that Friday the 13th has uh how should I say echoes in modern day. I'm gonna just leave it at that. So they created what could be considered the first international banking system. Now the organization was so widespread that a person could give money in England and recover that same amount in Jerusalem when they reached there, right? There are those who believe that the Knights Templars were keepers of certain wisdom tradition, right? And they passed on their secrets from one generation to another's. These so on and so forth, right? Even though the true extent of the Knights Templars may not be revealed, their legacy continues to captivate and intrigue the people worldwide. Like we have movies that continue to be made about the Knights Templar, right? Um, Now there is, like I said, the Knights Templar, their destruction in France in 1307, because of the collusion between Christian Pope and the French king, and the desire to go after the Knights Templar treasure, made the Knights Templar kind of, well, those Templars that were in France, they were persecuted heavily for months, right? Uh, and I think this is where you get the tradition of a person called Jacques de Molay, right? And his involvement in the legacy of even modern day Masons. Now, um, so the conception is that the Knights Templar went underground. The Knights Templar went underground, and like I said earlier, split into two different organizations: the Rosicrucians and the Masons. Actually, the Rosicrucians would have a claim, an earlier claim, as far as organization, documented organizations, than the Knights Templar, because their first document, the alchemical wedding of Rosencrantz, I think dates to the 16th century, 1500s. Whereas, like the first lodge, the Western Lodge, we can get, like I said, it dates to 1717 in England. Now we can get into like the details and all of this other stuff. Those of you that are actually initiates in these traditions, you can critique the holes that you see thus far. But this was something put together and meant to be explored within a limited time frame. So we know that whole libraries are written on these subjects. Now, what you have here is the Knights Templars' connections to a group called the Assassins, right? Now, the Assassins are considered uh, an esoteric Islamic sect. They would have been considered an esoteric Islamic sect, right? And when there wasn't fights and battles and things of this nature going on, there's the discussion that they shared information. And my theory is that some of the information, or one of the things they shared, was the book Bahir. Now you have Islamic gnosis as well. You have 13th century mystics from Islam. You have things called the whirling dervishes, in which they use movement, sound, and trance in order to connect with the divine essence, or altered states of consciousness in order to connect with the divine essence, right? So, what is the Kabbalah? Let's go. So you know, that would be my understanding, right? What's going on here is Kabbalah survives, has a tradition in the Islamic countries. Kabbalah survives, has a tradition in the Islamic countries. And then with the Knights Templar and the interaction between the Knights. Now, this is a little too specific, but with the interaction of the Knights Templar and the assassins, the book Bahir came into possession of the Knights Templar and then made its way into France, where the earliest Jewish Kabbalists picked it up, right? And began to study. And then you have this explosion in Judaism of Kabbalah, right? So let's discuss what the Kabbalah actually is. Uh, so what the Kabbalah actually is its understanding of how the universe manifests itself through cascading levels of the interaction between energy and consciousness, from oneness to multiplicity, right? So this is kind of a rudimentary breakdown of Kabbalistic thought. You have unmanifested reality, then you have the first emergence of the demiurge, so to speak. Then you have the faculties of governing, and then you have the faculties of generation, and then you have physical reality, right? These are several different levels of manifestation within the Kabbalah. You have the first level here of unmanifested energy matter, all the way down to the last level, physical reality, right? Manifested energy matter in this hyper segregated, separated form, right? So then sphere zero is the existence that existed before manifested reality. There is no separation of energy, matter, or consciousness, will. All things exist together as one, right? And then in different traditions, it comes by different names. Like in the Hebrew, it's Ein Sof. In Kemetic, it would be Nun and Amen. In the Akan, it would be Olorun. In Indian Dravidic tradition, it would be Brahman. Then you have the first emergence, the initial separation of energy, matter, consciousness, will, were a portion of the infinite separated off into finite reality, right? In Hebrew, it would be called Kether, knowledge. In Kemet, it's called Asar, Patah, Yoruba, Obatala. In this Kush, it would be called Tara. In Sphere 2, one of the faculties of the Supreme Being manifested oneness characterized as omniscience, meaning all-knowing. And in Hebrew, that would be Chokma, Kemetic, Tahuti, Sia, and then in Yoruba, Orumila. I see here I have to do the Dravidian correspondences. And it goes on and on, right? So sphere 4 deals with the laws of the universe. Chesed Ma'at Ajay Chagulia in Yoruba. Sphere 5 is the force within the universe that goes off of balance. We could talk about that. This could be more likened to like the immune system of the universe. It's justice. You get, you know, you get what you are, you get what you pay for, so to speak. And what you are is the level of consciousness that you're traveling for. What you are is the level of consciousness that you're traveling on. And the pay is the result of the effort put forward in order to achieve or manifest the result of knowledge won or knowledge lost, right? So then you have 6, which is the faculties of governance, the force. Okay, so I definitely got to change all that. I didn't work on that. All right. Now, we're going to get to the modern expression of Kabbalah is an evolution of Valentinian Gnosticism. This is why the the understanding the early schisms or the schisms of the early church becomes very important because we're still dealing with it. It's not like it's in the past. We are still dealing with the schisms of the early church. Oh, interesting. All right. So let's talk a little bit about what Gnosticism was, right? Uh, I honestly think that Christianity started off as a Gnostic form of Judaism. All evidence points, and I have a completely different presentation that shows you how Christianity is nothing but but Hellenistic Judaism or Gnostic Judaism. Point blank, period. Right? But we're talking specifically now about Valentinius. So let's discuss who Valentinius was and go into some of his doctrine, right? He was a church father who was almost pope. That's interesting, right? Marcion was also a church father, and Valentinius was a church father. You gotta question, how did these people with what would be considered such heretical doctrines almost become church fathers, right? And he taught a form of Gnosticism that was in competition with the Orthodox Church. This, all right. Now, there are specific works that are associated with Valentinius. These would be the Apocryphon of John, the Thought of Noria, the Tripartite Protonoia, Gospel of the Egyptians, the Gospel of Truth, and the Hypostasis of the Archons. So, this is the a diagram, right off Wikipedia. This is a diagram explaining the manifestation of the eons in Valentinian Gnosticism, right? It looks hyper complex, especially if you've never seen it before. But just to let you know, just to be easy on the thought, easy on the mind, it's the emergence from oneness of duality. All of these entities are the positive and the negative of one another, right? If we can look at them as principles emerging from energy that emerges from oneness and has energy emerges from oneness, it manifests either in a positive or negative polarity, right? That's how we can look at Valentinian Gnosticism expressed in different ways. All right. So if we were to kind of then you wonder, what appears to happen. Now, this is where it gets theoretical because as of yet, I have not come across documented evidence which shows the mixing or the syncretism that occurred to turn this into this. But we see some of the similar principles going on here, which would be the expression of the negative and positive polarities. All right. So now what we have here, just to let you know, is the first persecution of Gnosticism was an edict against heretics in 332, right? This is what begins to have the Gnostics go underground. Then you have the Edict of Thessalonica, which forbid forms of Christians from gathering, right? So then you get this Emperor Theodosius, who continues the persecution of alternate forms of thought, I said earlier. Then in 386, which is you get the first recorded death penalty for being a Gnostic, right? So when Valentinius was in Egypt, what he learned. Now, Egypt by this time was clearly controlled by the Romans and it had been through Greek hands, so on and so forth. But the theology and the philosophy of emanation, by his very use of the term ogdo, the eight, the primordial eight, shows an intellectual lineage connecting Valentinian Gnostic thought to the Menphite theology, which is the oldest theology that mentions a primordial ogdod as the basis of creation. Now, and so here is the Shabaka stone and another representation in ancient Egyptian theology on the walls of Egypt of the Ogdo, right? This is thousands of years. Well, the Shabaka stone would be hundreds of years, but this other representation is thousands of years. And we have the Ogdo in the pyramid text. So the Ogdo has a concept and as a theology is thousands of years before Valentinius gets on the scene, right? It is Kemetic theology, Kemetic philosophy, the Menphite theology in particular, that informed. Now, here what I was saying there is the Menphite theology wasn't that is the basis of Gnosticism. That seems to be the intellectual ancestor of a lot of Western esoteric thought. Now, here are the primordial eight. It is Hu and Huhet that represent limitless or the limits. Ku and Kuket, which represents darkness. Nu and Nunet, which is the primordial waters, and Amen and Amenet, the hidden. From the Ogdo arises the demiurge, Ptah. And Ptah, using his word, which is his Hu, and his insight into creation, reaches back into the Ogdo and brings forth creation. Now, the Hu is Ptah's word. And there is one very famous biblical verse that came straight out of Menphite theology when it said, in the beginning was the word and the word was God. Taken straight from the ideology and the theology of the Menphite theology. Now, since I initially did this presentation, I've come across the understanding of what's called Platonic forms. And the concept of Platonic forms deals with the idea that whatever exists in the physical reality has manifested physical reality first exists in this non-material realm, has an idea, and then you as a conscious being attune yourself to that idea and bring together the elements to manifest that idea in physical reality, right? That's kind of a rudimentary understanding of Platonic forms in and of itself. Now, cycling back around to the modern day, right? We went on this whole journey, right? Simple playing, let's recap. Simple playing cards are steeped in esoteric tradition. Organizations influenced by the Masons within our community and developed theologies based on the number 9 are potentially promoting Kabbalistic teachings. These include, but are not limited to, the Masons, the Greek Divine Nine, the Nation of Gods and Earths. And if I had a conversation with a powerful brother already, but I'm gonna go ahead and present this because I don't see any other way. I'm not initiated in that tradition. I know they have a different thing, but the genesis, I'm speaking strictly on the genesis of these traditions, right? The Nation of Gods and Earths. Now, there are similarities between Sufism and other esoteric Islamic groups assigning meanings to number. However, the most probable link for the mathematics of the Nation of Gods and Earth is a Masonic lineage, right? And so, and our community is heavily steeped with Masons, heavily steeped with Masons. right? You have the Prince Hall Masons, you have the Nobles of the Mystic Shrine, which was influenced by, which influenced Noble Drew Ali. And then there's rumors that Elijah Muhammad was part of the Moors first, and that Elijah Muhammad was a Mason. And then we have Masonic symbolism all up and down the Nation of Islam, right? I went over the Tree of Life earlier. I'm gonna go back over the Tree of Life again and correct the things that I stopped at, right? Um, Now we also, be honest, we also find the association of numbers with principles in Sufism. And there was a Sufi temple in Harlem. All right, being honest, there was a Sufi temple in Harlem during the time of Father Allah and Abdul Sahid, right? Now, it's said that the mathematics in the nation of gods and earth developed as a result of either Clarence 13X or John 37X developing the curriculum of the 5% with the 95% Nation of Islam doctrine and somehow got mentored into esoteric Sufism mathematics, right? This is the two theories, right? But I think it was B, using the heavily influenced Masonic environment around them, Clarence 13X and John 37X, use Kabbalah and translated it in terms that would be relatable to the streets. In his biography, though, John, and even in his biography, John 37X says that he studied other metaphysical teachings along with the teachings of Elijah Muhammad. In that statement, he said that he studied the works of Madame Blavatsky, the founder of the Theosophical Society, right? John 37X is credited with also developing John 37X is credited with also developing the mathematics. Remember that. Now, the question and answer format of the initiation culture of the Nation of Gods and Earths is reminiscent of the question and answer format of Masonic initiation and the NOI lessons, right? But to be honest here, let me see. This is coming from the Naked Truth, the gold mine of Abdul Sahid, right? How the living math became the 12. Um, this is out of the chapter, How the Living Math Became the 12 Jewels. He says, you know, that don't bother me because when I came back I caught a pistol beef and went to jail again. And when I got out, they had taken my mathematics because I revealed what I knew to the Father. And they had taken what I knew and went to put my stuff in the 12 jewels. They knew I was going to 12, but they didn't understand how. Sister Carmen had seen me sit up for 3 days and 3 nights working on the mathematics, and she attacked me physically, saying, "Stop, stop," because I was building man, and she ain't never seen nobody build like that, right? He also says he's never argued with the Father. Now he says, I'm a believer that you can do things. And over the years, I have experimented with stuff and I did my research. I read a lot of stuff like Madame Blavatsky, the mother of theosophy, and that's the philosophy of God. This is from his own mouth, right? In his biography, right? Now, here's Sufi mathematics, right? This is the Sufi mathematics. All right. So let's end that portion, right? Now let's look at the transatlantic slave trade and sigil magic. Hmm. All right. This is what I say, right? The systematic use of symbols and ceremonies to connect with supernatural entities is a direct link to Egyptian magic. This is something you haven't seen before. So, what is a sigil? A sigil is a symbol used to communicate with supernatural forces, right? So, what is going on here? So, we got symbol plus meaning. Now, oh, we're talking about in Sabidi. There we go. Man, what is going on here? Come on now. So gotta go forward and go back. So sigils are used in several African diasporic spiritualities. Kiambanda, Palo Mayambe, Haitian Voodoo, and then Pombagira, right? So besides the Kemetic influence on African spirituality, could there be an alternative explanation? Yes, there's two possible plausible theories, right? The use of sigils to communicate with supernatural forces could have been developed from West African writing systems, and specifically the West African writing systems of Nsibidi in Nigeria are the cosmographic system writing of the Congo, right? Here's the difference, right? With the Nsibidi and the cosmographic system of the Congo, you have symbol plus meaning, which equals idea, right? And any of us that read the glyphs or anything other languages, we know that all writing is symbol that represents meaning, which gives it the idea. But in the Kemetic influence, you have symbol combined with ritual, which gives you access to deity, right? One of those two, this is the two possible theories on the Kemetic influence on West African spirituality, right? So what is Nsibidi, right? So here are my sources where I got everything from, right? Go ahead and check it out. Challenge me if you want, right? So according to tradition, Nsibidi was discovered by a woman in Cameroon who soon began using it, right? Her husband learned it from her and then forbade women from using it. The men then formed the secret Ekbe Society, also known as the Leopard Society, which operated as a political governing body in parts of Cameroon and Nigeria. Africans were taken from these areas and transported to Cuba, where we can see a leopard society today and with an Nsibidi writing system migrated. So we can see Nsibidi writing in Cuba and in Nigeria, right? So here is brothers that are initiated into the Ekpe society in Nigeria. And here are brothers initiated into the Abakua society in Cuba, right? And we can see the same writing on the walls, right? Now, the Nsibidi writing system consists of gestures, tattoos, symbols, signs, and other markings. It's one of the oldest systems of communication, and it dates back to over 4,000 years ago. It's taught in Nigerian West African secret society known like as the Egbe, right? Here are some of the signs that are associated with the Nsibidi writing system, right? And here is actually a court document, which shows that this is two men and women, right? Here's a symbol for man, or both man and woman. Here's man and woman being in love, right? This right here means that one of the parties engaged in another sexual relationship with someone else, and it brought uh some people will kill me for this because I didn't 100% completely memorize the system. Um, but it brought the other person was on the outside, right? So we can see here now what ended up happening was people from other communities came in to regulate the case, right? But this is all what is being transpired here, right? But it's the use of symbol to communicate ideas, right? And then you have so Nsibidi as a writing system goes all the way back to 1500 BCE. So it's one of the oldest writing systems in the world, right? Here are some uh this is from the Lydia Cabrera papers, which shows, you know, the use, these are Santeria symbols, which also shows the use of Insibidi symbols, right? All right, so that's the question, right? Are the sigils are the sigils of certain deities in African spirituality the result of Insibidi, or is there Kemetic influence? Now, Palo Mayombe, right? It's a Congo-derived African-based spiritual system that incorporates elements of Catholicism in its practice, right? Mayombe is a forest region in the Congo, right? Here is the Mayombe forest region in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, it's an African-based spiritual system that incorporates elements of Catholicism in its practice. Just like Santeria is a Yoruba-derived. Now, in Cuba, they also have Santeria, which is a Yoruba-derived African religion. That's a syncretism of Yoruba and Catholicism, right? And here our brothers and sisters in Cuba getting initiated into Palo Mayombe, right? Now, here are some symbols of Palo Mayombe, right? And these sigils, are used to connect with certain supernatural spiritual entities. Some people, right? And so we can now, the question is, does it come from, spirits, Kemetic sigil relationship, or is it derived from Insibidi, right? Now, the fuel behind the Haitian Revolution, right? Here are some other sigils that are used to connect with Papa Legba, Ogun, Dambala, Simbi, right? So then you have Kiambanda. Now, this is definitely from Solomonic magic. Anybody that's understanding Solomonic magic can see the similarities of the sigils here, right? But these are sigils that are used to connect with Eshu, Ray, which is Eshu Elegba. These are all the Eshus within Paloma, within Kiambanda, which is a spiritual practice of Brazil, right? Now, this is a blend of Christianity. It's indigenous Brazilian African tradition. Now, this particular tradition was formed due to the people rejecting the enslavement that was occurring around them and the ways of the society, right? There are 72 exu spirits, just like the Lesser Key of Solomon, for those brothers and sisters that know about the Lesser Key of Solomon. Here are some of the sigils used to connect with these energies. And the interesting thing here is what their Legba tradition has Papa Legba as a woman, right? Which but normally when you go into West African spirituality, Papa Legba is a man, right? Who is in charge of the seven crossroads. Now, this comes from a book that within symbolic Freemasonry, the guardian of the seven doors, Pital Reyes, is responsible for the seventh degree when every Masonic initiate receives from his astral a spirit that will act on his left, watching over the mysteries of the seven negative doors. This is from this author here, The Guardian of the Seven Portals by Rubens Sarancini on page 253, right? So Omolu is Babalu Aye in this tradition, right? Now, this is my theory. So the Catholic Church use sigils in their own spiritual practice to deal with possession, right? Now, then I got into this whole thing. What specific Catholic order was responsible for the secretism that occurred in these areas? Who introduced sigil magic to Africans in the Ma'afa? And I think it was the Dominicans and the Jesuits. I think these particular orders were the ones that still use sigils um, in their practices of dealing with exorcism, right? And documentation has the Jesuits owning over 17,000 Africans in South America, right? The Dominicans, who were in Haiti first, and then the Jesuits arrived in 1704, right? In Cuba, the Dominicans, the Jesuits, and the Franciscans were dominant, Catholic orders, right? Now, the Catholic orders of the Dominicans and the Jesuits both possessed knowledge of sigils and passed this knowledge to enslaved Africans in their territories. This is what I believed. I think that enslaved Africans created syncretistic religions of the Americas, blended the knowledge of the Congolese, the Ghanaians, the Nigerians, and other African ethnicities, and Catholicism. Right? So both orders, the Dominicans and the Dominicans and the Jesuits, have their genesis in the persecution eras of Christianity. The Dominican order started in 1216. The Jesuit order began centuries later in 1540 as a result of Protestantism, right? And in the 13th century, remember, the 13th century was the time that esoteric sciences exploded in Europe due to the exchange with Muslims and their translation of ancient texts. Remember that from from a little while ago, right? The first esoteric text where we see sigils emerge comes from something called the Grimoire of Pope Honorius, right? Pope Honorius, which is more than likely a pseudonym and written by another author. However, what we do have is medieval documents that teaches the use of sigils, right? Here's a sigil for the god Frimost, right? How you communicate, right, with deity. Remember, I'm trying to say that it's the introduction of symbol plus ritual, which gets to deity communication, because that's what we have when we're dealing with diasporic African traditions. The combination of symbol plus meaning, symbol meaning ritual to communicate with deity, not symbol and meaning to communicate idea, right? Here's the king of the East. Now, we got to connect this all back to Kemet. In the text, in the ancient Christian magic, Coptic text of ritual power, we can see the use of sigils here used to connect with Jesus Christ and other angelic beings, right? We are looking at ancient Egyptians, or near ancient Egyptians, use of sigils to communicate with supernatural beings, right? This is all up and down the text when you read it, right? Now, this is the Greek magical papyrus dated to 100 to 300 BCE, and we still see the same found in Egypt. This is Egypt. They call it Greek magical papyrus, but it's found in Egypt, right? What we see is the same idea, the use of sigils to communicate with deity all throughout the papyrus. All throughout the papyrus. Now here, the Sefer HaRazim is a Jewish text dated to like the 5th through the 7th centuries. And we also see here the use of sigils here to represent planetary powers, so to speak. Once again, here's the use of sigils. So that is the text here. All right. So I'm about an hour and a half into the presentation. Let me do the last portion of this presentation. The Egyptian origin of energy systems in the body. Hot topic, hot topic, hot topic, right? All right. So this comes from the Greenfield Papyrus, right? Now, this particular image comes out of Mu'adh Ashby's work of the Serpent Power, right? Where we're looking at the seven chakras and then this representation here of seven energy centers are seven orbs within the scene of the wane of the heart, right? So what is this about? Now, some people say that it's now that my information here comes from Tantra Illuminated and Chakras Energy Centers of Transformation. So if you want to confirm whatever I got, there you go. Right? So what are chakras? Chakras are energy centers in the body that are active at all times, right? So there are many different. Now, here's the thing that you may not know. There are many different systems of chakras. Like the current system of seven chakras come from a book by Sir Arthur Avalon. But you also have the Puranika chakra system, which has 12 chakras, the Wadikra chakra system, which has 9 chakras, and the Yoga Chamundi chakra system from the Yoga Chamundi Upanishad, which talks about 6 chakras, right? Now, in the West, this was the book that jumped off the modern day craze with chakras, and it espoused a 7-day chakra, a 7 chakra system, right? But if you were to look into the book Laya Yoga, you would see the Puranika system has 12 chakras. The Muladhara, the common 7, plus the Harit chakra, which is in the heart, the Talu chakra, which is in the back of the throat, the Shakti chakra, which is in the back of the head, the Kalisa, the Rodina. You don't hear about these in other systems, right? Then you have the Narayana chakra system, which has 9 chakras, which also, again, with the addition of the Talu and the Nirvana chakra, which they say holds all the wisdom and lessons of your past, right? Now, what we know of the modern yoga is named after a man named Goraksha. Hold a second. Give me one moment, everybody. All right. Uh, so what are chakras? They are energy centers that go up the spine, and conscious activation of them leads to different psychic states, right? Now, to be honest, we don't have the concept of chakras in Kemet, nor do we have specific statement of energy centers. Also, according to Tantra Illuminated, the modern system of chakras didn't even begin to originate to the 1st century of the Common Era. So it definitely couldn't have influenced ancient Kemet that way. Now, this is the difference, right? You have set in the Kemet, they're gods. In India, they're energy centers. And Kemet from North Africa, India, southern India. Here's the comparison between the two, right? But let's go into the text, right? Let's go into the text, right? Where do we have now? Do we have what is this going on right here? What does this scene represent? Right? What are they talking about here, right? Can we look at the Indian chakra system and and put that conception on this image? So let me explain what's going on here. This is Jehudi judging the soul of a person to see whether or not their soul or their heart is as light as a feather, right? They're going up against Ma'at. And see, this is Amet, the soul eater, severing the connection. This is Amet, the soul eater, severing the connection here between the third and the fourth energy center, right? And you do have 7 representations here. Now, other people are trying to say that these are ink blots. I find that very interesting that these ink blots show up in such specific ways, being separated so specifically from each other in this specific way. I mean, it is really, I don't think so, you know, because even if they were faded, something was there for it to fade from, right? So now, Marta Ashby, he connects it. Now, Marta Ashby connects it to the chakras. Now, is that correct? I don't know. I don't think so. Let's look at what the Kemetics say for themselves. Here's the pyramid text spell 223. Unas, who swallowed his 7 urea and his 7 neck bones that go up the spine, that came into being, his 7 enneads, and here's the sovereign case, right? Unas will receive myrrh, become beautified with myrrh. Unas's fingernail full of myrrh. Unas will take away your power, God. Serve Unas who will assign your ka. Pyramid text 371. Here we go with another 7. There are 4 in the sky and 3 for earth. 4 up, 3 down, separating. 4 for the spiritual, 3 for the physical. Here is spell 374. I am a Nahu snake, a bull snake who swallowed his 7 urea, his 7 neck vertebrae came into being. Once again, from the coffin text, 7 urea serpents, 7 neck vertebrae, 7 groups of gods, 7 enneads, right? Both cultures use symbolism to represent the rise of energy. The spell here is interesting, right? A spell for demanding a coffin in the beautiful West. O incense, put yourself on your mother. She watches over those who are in the sky, namely those who fly up. O you 7 gods, the western, eastern, southern, and northern hunters who hunt, right? In the wall, a tomb stands up. May you command that I come and see in these 7 days of yours, right? 7 gods, 7 days, similar to modern astrology. Each day associated with a planet. Interesting, right? Spell 1011. O you pillars of Re, I go up and enter between you. My hair stands up, my braided tress is disordered, because I am one whose mouth is pure and whose teeth are strong, right? I detest wrongdoing. I am purified, a tongue, because I have honor, and I am a Tekenu, possessor of 7 portions in On. 3 portions of mine are in the house of Horus. 2 portions of mine are in the house of Ses. 2 portions of mine are on earth with Geb, right? We have this 7, 7 portions again. Spell 188. I will live on those 7 portions which have gone forth upon the great altars of the souls of On. 4 portions in the sky with Ra, 3 portions on the earth with Geb, right? So looking in the culture itself, we can begin to piece apart what this symbolism here represents. Now this spell 189 is interesting. Uh-oh. Spell 189 is interesting. Um, so that's just all it is. And it says, once again, 7 portions which are issued from the great altars of the soul of On, 4 portions in the sky with Ray, 3 portions on earth with Geb, talking about the person's soul. Once again, the symbolic representation here in the Greenfield Papyrus begins to make sense in the cultural context of ancient Egypt. Spell 195 in the coffin text, once again, says the same thing. 4 portions in the sky with Ray, 3 portions on the earth with Geb. I mean, there's all day with this joint, right? So, what were the names of the 7 gods? Now we have epitaphs of the names. Bull, the first is the bull who was not put to his burning. The second is the black-faced who was in his hour. The third is the bloody one who was preeminent in the mansion of red linen. The fourth is radiant face who comes out after having turned back. The fifth is he who sees in the night what he shall bring by day. The sixth is, so you see it. You see it in front of you here, right? Now these are epithets to certain gods. I will do the study to see if I can find who these epithets belong to. And that'll come in time with time. So, but now we know the meaning of this scene. And that's it for the presentation. Thank you. All right, yo, let me know what you think. This is going to be on a larger platform a little bit later. I'll keep this up for a little while and review it myself. But hope all is well and blessed with you. Let me go ahead and stop that right there. You know,